Welcome back everyone. Time to do another comparison this time around between the brand new Xbox Series S and the Xbox One X. Now I did a quick comparison, I think like a couple of months ago, whenever the Xbox Series S was kind of announced. And what I can tell you is that there's for sure a lot of differences between these consoles, but just like what I said on my previous video about the Xbox Series S and the Series X, if you currently own even an Xbox One S, there's not going to be an excruciating reason why you should go and pick up an Xbox Series S right now if you didn't already pre-order it. Now, if you're lucky enough to pre-order it, then by all means keep it, it's definitely going to do you justice. But there are some reasons why you probably may be better off just keeping your Xbox One X right now. The biggest reason why I will probably tell you to keep your Xbox One X is mostly because a lot of the games that are going to be coming out and all the updates that are coming out and everything like that are still going to be supported for your Xbox One X and your Xbox Series S. So there's not really an excruciating reason to update. Again, if you have all the money in the world, if you already updated, if you already pre-ordered, then by all means keep it. But I think for the time being, an Xbox One X is still completely relevant, and in some ways it may actually be better, I think in just one way, than the Series S in my opinion. Now pricing wise, the Series S cost me about $299 to pick up. There is a monthly option to pay for it, but if you want to do that, you can go for it, but I just bought it outright. I also bought the Series X, that was $499. The One X, on the other hand, when I bought it last year, was about $350, but you can pick it up in a lot of places for less than $300 in the used market. I'm sure there's still some probably being sold somewhere in the used market, and maybe even in the new market. And I feel like Black Friday, a lot of these things are probably going to be sold. I just have a weird reason. I don't know why, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of bundles and stuff with TVs and things, but I guess we'll see what happens in the future. But with the Xbox One X and the Series S, there is a little bit of a different design on the outside. So I kind of like the Series S design more, and I really like the way it feels. With the One X, when I bought it, it just doesn't feel as premium in my opinion as the Series S. And that may sound very weird. You may not even know what I mean by that, but there's just something about the One X that I didn't really like. It just felt super plasticky for no apparent reason. And I totally understand you're just gonna kind of put it away and not have to worry about it. But I feel like with the Series S, for some reason, it just kind of feels more premium. It feels like the One S back in the day. And that's kind of a huge deal in my opinion. It's not really a crazy deal, I take that back. But it is something that you're going to put away, you're going to look at. Visually, it looks really good. Both consoles look extremely good, and you're never gonna really pick them up and feel them in your hand. You're just gonna put it there and just gonna forget about it. But I still like the design of the Series S. Now, on the outside of the Xbox One X, we have two HDMI ports, two USB ports, an Ethernet, and then a USB port on the front, where the Xbox Series S has one HDMI port, the memory card expansion port, which I think is actually really, really awesome, two USB ports, then a USB port on the front, as well as the Ethernet port on the back. And what I can tell you is right there's already kind of an advantage for the One X. You are getting an additional HDMI port, which I think is really, really cool. And I've heard in some cases, basically this is a pass-through of other consoles. I've actually heard some people say they, connected their Nintendo Switch to their Xbox this way and just kind of use this as a pass-through. And instead of using two different HDMI ports, you can just plug it into this one. And I think that's really cool. I'm surprised Microsoft didn't put it into the next one. But that is a cool advantage that we have on the One X that we don't have on the Series S. And there's probably one more thing I'm going to hit on later. But in terms of the outside, you can kind of pick which one you like. I definitely wouldn't downgrade to the One X just because of that feature. But that is one thing to kind of keep in mind while you're kind of going through with this. But this is the cheaper console from the newer one, so that's definitely important. Now, booting them both up, we have pretty much the exact same software on both. I don't think there's really that big of a difference between them so far. But again, this one is going to be getting more updates. And within 5 years from now, when the One X is completely outdated and there's no more updates for it or anything, then that's when we're going to see some bigger differences. But as of right now, for the most part, they seem kind of the same. However, there are some internal differences in terms of gameplay that kind of make the Series S a better deal. Now, with the One X, we're pretty much tapped out at 4K. You can do 1080p and all that crazy stuff at different frame rates, but that is a big advantage for the One X that you can still do 4K. But on the Series S, it takes it to the next level. You can do 4K at 60 frames, which is really cool. You can also do 1440p at 120 frames, which is awesome. And you can also do 8K in the future as well. So I think that 1440p and 8K options are going to be coming out eventually in an update, but we can already do 4K at 60 if your TV supports it. But it's very, very important that you understand that. If you don't have a TV that supports it, if you have a 1080p TV, then obviously everything I just said is not going to make any sense to you. and it's not going to work in your case. But if you have like the best in class, like extremely expensive TV, then it's going to be able to handle all these different things that I said. So that's definitely going to be extremely, extremely important as well. But there is kind of a disadvantage with the Xbox Series S, another disadvantage I would say, and that comes in the form of the disc slot. There is no disc slot on the Xbox Series S. There is one on the One X though, and there's one on the Series X as well, but that's not being talked about right now. With the One X, you do have that capability. So if you have a lot of games that are in disc format, there's no real way to actually play it on the Series S unless you actually have a disc. And I actually think there's some accessories out there that can kind of mimic a disc slot, so you're not completely out of norm. And if you've already downloaded those games on your Microsoft Store, then you're pretty much set for the most part. But that's another big thing to keep in mind. You don't have that Blu-ray player on the Series S that you kind of have on the One X, and you don't have that much capability when it comes down to the disc slot. So you really have to rely on pretty much everything through downloads in the Microsoft Store. But if you already download games on another third-party, disk drive of some sort, then you can still play them on the Series S as well. So it's really not that bad, but you just miss out on some disc capabilities. So that's one thing to keep in mind. In terms of the RAM though, and in terms of gameplay, I mean, gameplay is going to be about the same right now, but eventually down the road, it is going to be, I guess, a faster machine than the One X. But there is a disadvantage with the RAM management. On the Xbox Series S, you have 10 gigabytes of RAM, where the One X actually has 12 gigabytes of RAM. And I think that's a pretty big deal too. I think if you're going to be playing a bunch of games and handling a bunch of, big, tremendous games, the more RAM, the better. And the Xbox Series X, I think, has like 16 gigs of RAM, which is huge. And with this one, I think 10 gigs is still perfectly fine for the most part. But it is kind of weird that the One X from, many, many years ago has 12 gigs, which is more than the newest console. So it is what it is. I'm not really freaking out about it too much, but that is something to keep in mind. But on the flip side, you do have an SSD built in into the Xbox Series S, where you don't really have that on the One X. We had a hard drive built in, and that in and of itself can cause a bunch of differences in terms of the load time. So if you're playing a bunch of big games and you're, trying to read a bunch of stuff from your specific hard drive or SSD, this can also cause a lot of, not necessarily breakage, and this can cause a lot of slowdown if you're constantly trying to read huge files, and the load times and just everything will be better on the SSD than on the hard drive. And in this case, the Xbox Series S has a huge advantage over the One X in this case. So like I said, that's another humongous asset for it. In terms of the gameplay, like I stated, it's going to be about the same. I've already hit on this like 10 times, but eventually down the line, the Series S will probably get you better gameplay than the hard drive on the Xbox One X. Now, the controllers are a little bit different on both, not like a tremendous difference, but there is some differences. So I feel like the Series S controller actually feels a bit more premium overall, and I like the way it looks. The One X controller I think was really, really good, and it's basically the same thing as the One S controller, even the One controller. But there are a couple of key differences. You do have that share button on the Xbox Series S controller, which is really cool now, and it's just automatic. You don't have to go into a guide or anything like that. But on top of that, I kind of like the texture on the back of the Series S controller now. It kind of feels more premium. It feels really good in my opinion. And like I said before, that's another huge asset for it. When you're constantly playing a bunch of these games, you want to have a comfortable controller, and I don't really think one feels necessarily more premium than the other one. But in this case, I will give the edge to the Xbox Series S for having the better controller overall. And I already hit on the pricing, but I'll pretty much say it again, the Xbox Series S costs $299 brand new to pick up. The One X is actually $299 in some places I saw brand new, but in the used market, you can pick it up theoretically cheaper than that, which is a very good thing to say because for a last generation console, which isn't really too far behind from the Series S, that's an important thing because I feel like the Series S is good and great, but the One X still has a lot of, maybe even some upsides to it than the Series S. Now the game catalog is going to be roughly about the same for now, but you will have all the games that the Xbox One comes out with, the One X included, and all the games in the future that the Series S that are pretty much exclusive for that lineup. So again, that's another huge asset for it. I think for sure overall, the One X, in my opinion, is a great console. I think there's a lot going for it, and I don't even think it's that bad of a console to pick up right now. But I still think the Xbox Series S, even though of the downsides the Series S has, isn't necessarily like a step behind. I think it's a step forward. I think as of right now, the One X, it being the top tier at that time, compared to, I guess, the beginning and the entry model of this new lineup, it doesn't really give it a fair fight because there are some disadvantages with the Series S, but I feel like a lot of those are kind of fixed in some different areas. With the RAM, it being a little bit lower, well, at least you still have, an SSD built in that the hard drive on the Xbox One X just doesn't have. On top of that, they're roughly around the same price. There's nothing too crazy, maybe like a $50 difference, so that's not even that big of a deal. The non-disc slot on the Series S can really be overcome if you swap out a lot of that expandable storage on the back of the console that we do have that new port on. So that's another big deal too, in my opinion. So a lot of the minor things that I've kind of complained about, you can necessarily just, fix it with just everything that I just mentioned. So definitely when it comes down to it, that's how I view it. If you have an Xbox One X, I would still keep it for now until, obviously, if you can pre-order the Series S, go for it. But if you can't, I don't really think you're missing out on too much currently as of right now, but eventually down the line you probably will. But I feel like the Xbox Series S is a really good console and it's probably the better one between these two. But it's very interesting that there's a few key differences between both that are very interesting and sometimes make one console look better than the other one even though it's older. So that really pretty much covers it up for the most part. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that means so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count. So it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.